ACEcharity basically yours is radio program, right? That's the form of education. That's the alternative that you use. What's that like, and how effective is that in this 21st century, really?
Okay, thank you for that question. So for us at ACEcharity, one of the reasons we started ACE Radio School was because during the COVID-19 pandemic, children were stuck at home. And while there were several children from private schools or from, higher socioeconomic status, they were able to access learning through the internet. They had laptops, they had phones. We had children who didn't have this luxury, staying back at home and not learning. And so we thought to ourselves, what is the form of technology that is accessible in northern Nigeria, in rural areas? And that is the radio. Over 80% of rural Nigerians, especially in northern Nigeria, own a radio. That is what you see the farmer, you see the cattle rearer with his radio. And so we decided to use that to teach. The idea was to teach during the COVID-19 pandemic. But what we realized was that even out-of-school children were calling us, telling us how they were learning, telling us how they were benefiting. And so we knew that we had to pivot to out-of-school children and not just focusing on school children during the pandemic. Okay. So once the pandemic was over and schools resumed, we knew that we couldn't leave out-of-school children behind. And so we started airing through the radio for out-of-school children specifically. So for our content, what we did was we ensured that the topics that are being taught are according to the national curriculum. And then we got private school teachers from high-quality schools to develop scripts on these topics and to record these topics. So one, to ensure that even though they are in the rural village, somewhere that we will never know, they are still getting learning from a highly qualified professional teacher. And so we try to make these topics interactive. We try to use local materials. We try to use stories. For example, counting. We will tell them to go and get stones and use that to learn how to count. We will tell them, is there beans, is there rice at home? Use that to learn how to count. Use that to add. Okay. So those are some of the things that we try to do to make it interactive.
But how practical is this if we compare this alternative radio and, we're comparing it with a technology?
Okay, so I think one thing we forget is that radio is also a technology. So I want to, I think 2 years ago or so, Nigeria actually launched the Nigerian Learning Passports. And what they're doing is they're providing online learning for children through the internet, but you need internet services. But what about the child who his father is a cattle rearer and he has to go to the farm, or he has to follow his father to rear cattle? What about the lady who has to go to the market with her mom and has to sell? She does not have an Android phone. So what should we do in this case? Do we leave them to wait until they have access to this online technology before they start learning? Then they will be left behind. So what radio does is it bridges this gap. Radio is not supposed to overtake, or we're not saying radio is better than ICT, but for some children and for a large percentage of children, that is the only form of ICT, or that is the only form of technology that they have. And that is the only form of learning that they are going to get. So in the meantime, while Nigeria is trying to catch up and trying to get these children to have access to this technology, at least they have ACE Radio School to learn.
All right.